Greetings, everybody. This is David Avocado Wolfe, and welcome to the Immunity Summit, or wherever you are that you're seeing this. We might put it on other platforms as well. I've got a meeting coming up here with a person I've been longing to meet for many, many years. I thought maybe we had run into each other at like a farmer's market in Byron or something in Australia, but I don't think we have. I don't think we've ever actually met in person. I'm very familiar with this man's work. He's a worldwide, well-known astrologer and an enthusiast of knowledge and real knowledge and archetypical knowledge and advancing the human enterprise by wisdom. And what an interesting gentleman we're going to have on. His name is Santos Bonacci, and he's been battling the establishment, the system all along. He will not go gently into that good night. Welcome, Santos. How are you?
Oh, thank you for the very, very kind and wonderful compliments. I've really appreciated. And likewise, I've been following your work for about a decade and posting it here, there, and everywhere on my media, and appreciate your work as well. So great. This is a nice thing for me. For me personally, it's really nice.
It's really cool. I feel the same way. It's like, wow, we're just two souls finally connecting up. And you remind me of all my friends over there in the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast and over there in Byron. And you're probably there. I mean, is that your neighborhood there? Where are you?
Yeah. That's where I come from. I'm in Mexico at the moment, but I was on the Sunshine Coast, which is north of the Gold Coast, and both of them are so beautiful. But the people are pretty similar. It's just there's more of a commercial demographic there down in the Sunshine Coast and Byron now. But Byron Bay is typical of the awakening. It's the most eastern point in Australia, and it has the spirit of the Aboriginals there and the spirit of truth and knowledge, all of that with Mount Warning there and the Caldera region. It's all sort of like, it's the first part of Australia that is lit up. Mount Warning, especially, that's what it means, because the very top of it is the very, very first part of Australia that is illuminated as sun, quote unquote, rises in the east.
Fantastic. And I've hiked Mount Warning, and I remember actually one time coming down from Mount Warning, and there's the whole way up and down, you kind of cross over the stream, because there's a spring up there that rolls down, and near the bottom especially, you cross that stream and there's really fine pebbles, and it's just a really interesting visceral experience of how our water filtration systems work. Because when you have these different cartridges, one of them will be activated charcoal, one of them might be a calcium, but one of them is typically pebbles, in these systems you see out of people's sinks and stuff. And that particular incident, of having all those dissimilar pebbles all there in that water, and you step into it and you're like, whoa, this water feels really cold and really good, is one of my favorite experiences of Mount Warning. It really kind of taught me how just, flowing water over smooth spherical pebbles, what that does is really profound.
Yeah, great filtration system. The nature has it all worked out. It's just a perfect system, and so we can only learn from it and grow with it. It's so beautiful. Everything in nature, the light, the water, all the elements, the ether, what is solid is so beautiful as well. It's tantalizing and beautiful, and in every field, in every element, there is God's mind penetrating and creating what we call reality.
I was using the word percolate recently about how the cosmic giggle percolates its way into every phenomenon. And we're right now in the middle of this like coronavirus scare, and everybody's freaking out. We're doing the Immunity Summit. The main thing I want to talk to you about is the astrological points of all this, and how you're reading this astrologically, and where we're going to be. Where were we? Where are we now? And then where are we going to be in 3 weeks, 3 months, 6 months astrologically, and what that means. But this cosmic giggle is another piece that percolates through this. The comedy of it is out of control. Just the insanity, the toilet paper apocalypse. We might have to actually talk about how that fits in astrologically too, because I've never really heard anybody. I think you're the guy who could really detail how comedy and astrology feed into each other, and what are the comical aspects or nodes or parts of the astrological coordinates that feed into our reality. So, with no further ado, should we just jump into astrology? I mean, you're the guy on that. You're my favorite astrologer in the world.
Thank you, brother. Thank you very much. And astrology is my favorite subject. It's I've always called it two things, where I haven't heard anyone else call it. Not astrologers anyway, which is a shame. But it is the mother of all sciences. That must be the first expression. And then something that I coined myself, because when you look at the word astrologos, it really, what it is saying is the word of God. Because astro is light, and God is light. Logos is the teachings, the science of, the ways of, the philosophy of, the truth of God, or the word of God. Logos is the word. So it absolutely says, it tells you it's the word of God. And in the East, they call it Jyotish, the science of light. Funny about that. So really, it's the science of electromagnetism, waves, because there are two waves of light, radiation waves and vibration waves. Magnetism, electricity. Good, evil. Source light, light of effects. So either way, when you study astrology, you are studying both fields, electricity and magnetism, which are two of the three trinity fields of creation. So first and foremostly is dielectricity, the father, black light, no colors. And its yin-yang partner, white light, magnetism, motion, rest and motion. Motion is white light, all colors. Black light, no colors. White light, all colors. When those two rub together or work against each other, thank you, Ken Wheeler, then what happens is a hybrid energy called electricity comes along, red shift, blue shift. White light is refracted, and then Snow White becomes seven dwarfs, the seven colors.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay. You always have great things like this, and that I hadn't heard that one before. Okay, keep going. This is great. Good stuff.
Yeah, and Snow White is so pure, like the Virgin Mary, because white light does not vibrate. It's a radial wave. It's longitudinal. There's no vibratory components. Its child, Isis, has Horus in its hand. Its child is red shift, blue shift. That's a vibratory, transverse, Hertzian, material wave. Thank you, John Mawelsky. Electricity is material, physical, vibration, hence good vibes, bad vibes, red shift, blue shift. Magnetism is spiritual. It's 10 billion times more powerful than its hybrid child, Horus, in the arms of the Virgin Mary, white light, electricity. So it is much, much more powerful. It's the pulse wave. It pulsates. It doesn't. So radiation pulsate.
Radiation has to move from one place to another place because it's radiating.
Radial, exactly, in every direction. So you picked a good science to start with, astrology, because astrology, when understood correctly, is called atomic science. So in astrology, when you look around the wheel, you see what's called the ascendant on the left. You see the MC on the top. You'll see the descendant on the west. And then you see the IC at the bottom. So starting from the AC, that spells A of the letter Adam. You go over to the descendant, you've got D. You go under to the Imum Coelum, the IC, and you've got I. And you go straight up the meridian to the MC, and you've got M. This is Adim. And that's the Hebrew way of saying Mars. Mars in Hebrew is Ma-Adim. So Zosimos, the 3rd century philosopher, Greek philosopher, told us that the first man was called Adam, and his name is in the astrological wheel. Ascendant, descendant, imum coelum, medium coelum.
Interesting. I haven't heard that one either. Now let's get into the, the energies of the different planets, the celestial bodies, and I guess first thing is we come from a scientism, brainwashing where astrology is denigrated, it's pushed away. Oh, this isn't a legitimate science. And as you and I know, that the deeper you go into it, the more and more legitimate and primary it becomes, and the more important it is in understanding all different kinds of archetypical events that are happening in our world. So let's just get right into, what's going on with the sun, the moon, the stars, the planets, the heavens, in relationship to what's happening, just say from the beginning of this year, 2020, and on through to this very moment right now, where we're going.
Okay, so I would look at the mundane chart. So in other words, the chart of the world. I won't be looking at anyone's natal chart or the national chart, or this is just what's the aspects that are going on now. First thing to mention is that at the moment, all the planets are on one half of the ecliptic. They're all within 5 signs from Capricorn Earth to Taurus Earth. So we have 4 planets in Capricorn, 2 of which are really, really causing a lot of mundane causes, effects. That would be Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. Well, I think Saturn just entered a few minutes ago, just entered into Aquarius for a little stay, and then it'll retrograde back into Capricorn.
Oh God, that's interesting. It'll push back in. Okay, interesting. So we get this. Okay, tell us. And then is Jupiter in Capricorn as well right now?
Yes, where he's not dignified. He's in detriment there.
Mm-hmm. Because Capricorn is Saturn's realm, correct?
That's right. Jupiter exalts at the Tropic of Cancer in the sign of Cancer. Jupiter, not exalt, it exalts in Cancer and it falls in Capricorn. It's not a detriment, it's called a fall. So for Jupiter to be there, this would indicate everything dealing with his energy is not going to have its full expression. It will be stunted. It will be constrained by Saturn's Capricorn energy. It will be conditioned, limited. It will not have its full expression because Jupiter is very expansive. When he goes into a sign, he expands the energy of that element. But in the case of Capricorn, he struggles to. But here's the thing. Right now, he is conjunct Mars on 24 degrees Capricorn and Pluto on 24 degrees Capricorn.
Jeez, right there.
Oh, it's hectic. This is what's going on right now in politics, because we're talking the 10th house Capricorn. Pluto is destruction and transformation. Saturn, who just left a couple of minutes ago, it would have been, because last night I checked that he was still in Capricorn, right? It was 29 degrees, 57 minutes. So he's just popped in now. I can see on Astro theme, he's 0 degrees, 3 minutes Aquarius. So he loves that cusp anyway. That's the cusp where Saturn's night sign, Capricorn, turns into his daytime instantly when it comes into Aquarius, and that's where he's more beautified, he's more dignified than in Capricorn. Now, that stellium of Pluto, Mars, and Jupiter, these are all big players when it comes to politics. Jupiter is a lawmaker. Mars is like the military, martial, military, maritime, marathon. It's all about male energy. So you can see this very clearly with the knee-jerk male type left brain reactions to a very, very small so-called
threat. What
so
it's and just to bring that into light, it's like this, they've definitely blown this out of proportion. I think we've got something that's worse than SARS or H1N1, but as we have all the means necessary to deal with these infectious, agents. I just want to just track into this for 1 second. Years ago, I had a friend who got SARS, and so it's a respiratory infection. In fact, that's what it means. It's something like acute respiratory infection, or SARS, whatever. It has to do with respiration. And he came to my office, and I said, here, we're going to bubble the ozone through olive oil, and you're going to breathe it, because I have an ozone machine in my office. And so we did that for a couple hours, passing it back and forth. It self-cleans because the ozone purifies and cleans all infectious agents. And in 2 hours, after 3 months, he'd been suffering from this. He was completely cured. That was the end of it. And it's just like, just the absurdity of the whole thing. So, we both share that. We understand the absurdity. And I do want to track back to the cosmic giggle that's in all this, but keep going. This is so interesting. So just to recap, we got 4 planets sitting there in Capricorn with Saturn just outside, but it's going to retrograde back in. And Saturn's, that's its favorite spot, I assume, right, in Capricorn, and right, especially on the cusp of Aquarius. Then you got Mars, Pluto, and Jupiter. Also, this is interesting. And talk to us about how this is playing out, and then talk to us what happens next.
All right, so Capricorn is about Ptolemy, the greatest and most famous astrologer of all time, said that the solstitial axis of Capricorn and Cancer is the king. It is the rulers, the government structure, etc. And then the equinoctial axis of Libra and Aries he called the ecclesiastical, the priest. So this is the cross of the king and the priest. The Celtic cross is telling you this is the priest going up to heaven, and this is the king on the stationary flat earth ruling his kingdom. So it's earth, the king, and spirit coming together in a cross, the priest. And that's why in scripture Jesus says that we will be kings and priests. So these cardinal points, the tropical cross, are actually teaching us that when planets are in them, they affect that axis, whether it's the axis of the king or the priest. Now the thing with Capricorn is opposite is Cancer, and Cancer is the moonie, the money, the economy. And that's where Jupiter exalts in Cancer, and where June, the month of June, turns up. And that's where the Romans used to cast their mint, or make their, that was where the mint was, the factory for making their coins, in the temple of Juno, the consort of Jupiter, in June in Cancer. So having Jupiter falling in Capricorn is not good for politics, and it's not good for the economy, all right? And then Mars comes into the mix, and it's getting martial now. Now we've got soldiers on the street. They're here in Mexico as well, in the local towns. You see the military just standing around with their big machine guns. And Pluto is also about capitalism and capital and power.
Plutocracy is the word, right? Plutocracy is rule of money. Okay, keep going. This is great. This is epic.
That's it, plutocracy. So Pluto now he turns up in Capricorn in 2007, and that's when the economy fell in 2008. You really notice Pluto jumping into Capricorn. The world has never seen so many revolutions, so many transformations in 13 years since he's been there, so many changes, and they've been very, very destructive, almost revolutionary. Things are changing so quickly. So Jupiter, opposite June, his beautiful wife, where he exalts in June in Cancer, is struggling to... Fortunately, it's very fortunate that Jupiter is there at the time he is, because Jupiter is the savior. Wherever Jupiter makes a an aspect with another planet that's struggling by trine or sextile, even by square or opposition, but not so powerful. With a trine, Jupiter always brings a good result. So it's always good to look for where Jupiter is whenever there's any kind of aspect or something going on. And it's amazing that he should just turn up right there, making this stellium with Mars and Pluto. So the way I see that is that Mars and Pluto are going to perform their actions, but Jupiter's going to come along and make it better, if you like, or, you know, put a blessing behind it. So in other words, that whatever dread and trial and suffering may happen, it will be for the good and it will have a good result. So that's the way I see Jupiter in there for the next, well, I think up until the 21st of December, he'll be in there, aspecting with Pluto there. And then he will be conjunct Saturn at 0 degrees Aquarius on the 21st of December. And from that point on, Saturn may just pop in really, really quickly in Capricorn, I think around May. I might be wrong about that, but I think he's there to stay. And that'll be my second Saturn return. I have Saturn in Aquarius. So what's going on now with Saturn just jumping into Aquarius is he is preparing for this great conjunction that the elites, the plutocracy, know is coming on the 21st of December. And it's basically the true baptism of the sign of Aquarius, which is John the Baptist actually is baptizing the year. At the start of the year, Aquarius turns up, and the rains of February are the baptism where the purification begins. And the Romans used to call January, John the Baptist, and it used to be called Baptismo, the baptism month. So, and it harks back to Jesus saying, where you see a man with a water pitcher, go in the room upstairs and he will show you where to celebrate the Passover. In other words, whenever Jupiter and Saturn enter into the sign in which the age is beginning, that is the official start of that sign. There's been a 7-year cusp since the end of 2012, the 21st of 2012, and that was when Pisces, the 50-year cusp of Pisces ended, which began in 1962, when the first energies of Aquarius started to establish themselves on the Earth. But at the end of this year, on the 21st of December, this is what everybody's focusing on, and especially the elites, because they know that the cosmologies, the mythologies, everything has to change. The thinking of mankind, we go from a Piscean, watery, ignorance kind of a state to a mental, Aquarian, fixed air energy, which opposite is the sun in Leo. So it's in the autumnal equinox is Leo, the vernal equinox is Aquarius. That's why in the West we usually just focus on the vernal equinoctial point, but in the East they go to the opposite. It's the age of Leo coming, and Leo is the golden age. It's about the sun. The sun rules. So the Savior, Jesus Christ, the Son, and that's what the
the Son of God. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, keep going. So with interesting, let me just back us up here for a second, because you know when we talk about the signs, a lot of times, like in my mind, I know it goes Capricorn, then it goes Aquarius, then it goes to Pisces, then it goes to Aries. You know, I know that in my mind, you know, in the way that the year moves around. But a lot of people don't know that. But what's interesting about the retrograde motion of the precession of the equinoxes, the backwards motion of the rising sun in the sign of Aquarius, the age of Aquarius, is that precession moves backwards, right? Because we're in the Piscean age right now, but we're moving step by step to when the sun's going to rise in Aquarius. And that's what you're referencing, correct?
Yes.
And that's
correct.
a big 2,000, what is it, 2,200 years or something like that, that will be in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay.
At the outer, the precessional year is 25,920 years. Sri Yukteswar, in his book, The Holy Science, he corrects that and he brings it down to 24,000 years. So it's a 24,000 year clock, really, when it's corrected, because it's not constant. It speeds up at the golden age and slows right down toward the Iron Age, which is what we've come from. And so all the scientists, they are calculating precession at the slowest rate. So and the Egyptians did that too in all of their...
So it extends it longer, actually. Right, I get what you're saying.
Yep. So when corrected, it's actually only 24,000 years. In other words, it's like something elliptic, you know, as when the two orbs are at perihelion, for instance, at January 4th, the sun and the earth are at perihelion. They are the closest to each other that they will be. And then opposite July 4th, July 4th is aphelion or apohelion, the Greeks would say, which means it's furthest away. So whichever model of the Earth you use, whether it's stationary flat Earth or the Copernican model, all agree on this point, that there's perihelion and aphelion. And so at perihelion, there's more speed. It's faster.
It's like the sun moving through the south, right? The sun has to cover more ground in the same amount of time. It speeds up, actually, and then it slows down when it goes around in the north, as we see through the analemma.
Yes.
And for those who don't know the analemma, let's just do a quick one on the analemma. If I took a picture, like outside right of my house right now, it's 2:27 p.m. And if every day I took a picture of the sun and the camera stays in the same spot, the sun isn't in the same spot. It actually prescribes a infinity sign that has a smaller loop in the north and a bigger loop in the south. That's the analemma, which is telling us that the sun moves faster in the south, which I suspect, and I'm going to want to ask you this question, that that also means that the southern supposed hemisphere is bigger. What do you think about that?
Yes, of course. So it's a variable speed sun and it's a variable height sun. So on the toroidal disc-shaped Earth, which every cosmology agrees with, in Bhagavad Gita, or rather Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, it describes our Earth, and it talks about the 15 levels inside the toroidal field that exist, and the Earth is the middle plane, or the Bhumandula on Jambudweep, the island. So what it says in Srimad Bhagavatam is that at the Tropic of Cancer, the sun is closest to the Earth at the bottom of its TP-shaped trajectory as it goes up to the Tropic of Cancer, like climbing the hill to Jerusalem, which it is, and then going down to Capricorn, and it winds up like a coil. It winds up at Cancer, brings the summer in the north.
Like woo, and then woo goes bigger down here.
And has to slow down, and then it speeds up as it goes round, and it says the sun is going to the mountains in the south and then climbing up to the north on a ramp.
Well said. Geez, that's well described. Whoa. Interesting stuff there. Okay, so now let's bring it back to, what's happening with Capricorn. Now, I want to get into this because this is something that people don't understand about the movement of the planets, is that, for example, in the sky, we see that Saturn is kind of prescribing these circles because it retrogrades backwards. right? And it's just always kind of going forward, then it's retrograding forward, then retrograding forward, then retrograding. And with Pluto, it's just moving very, very slowly, correct? It doesn't retrograde. Does Pluto retrograde or no?
Yes, it does.
It does. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
And how long is it retrograde, and how long is it in a sign?
It would be 25 years per sign.
Okay. And then in that sign, it might retrograde once, or how often? Do you know off the top of your head?
I think every 2 years Pluto retrogrades, but it's easy to find out. You can just punch it in Google. How often does Pluto retrograde? I might do it in a minute, but I think it's about every 2 years, and it's a long retrograde, like a good 6 or 7 months. So the thing with Pluto is the 10th sphere. It's the primum mobile in astrology. Then under that is the sphere, the 9th sphere of Neptune. It's called the crystalline sea. And then under that is Uranus. And that's the firmament with all the fixed stars in it. So when you actually see these 3 outer layers of the toroidal field, and we call them planets, it's incorrect. What we're seeing with Uranus is we're seeing the center of its influence, but the whole field of it is a Taurus field. It's like, yeah,
it's concretion point of that entire Taurus field, basically. It's like the most energetic point that we're actually seeing.
It's the heart. It's the heart, because when you're looking at the sun, you're actually looking at the heart of its massive Taurus field.
Yeah.
And the heart is what's called the hyperbola. If you've seen my material on All is Atom, you'll understand the true model of an atom is a torus field. But you can't just speak of torus fields as if that was it. You always have to speak of its other half, or its inversion, the hyperbola, which is the hourglass inside the donut. And it is always spherical. And that spherical bit is what you see of the sun, of its massive torus field. And it's called Bole or Bale. And it's all the bell words: obelisk, diabolical, Jabulon, Baal, Beelzebub, Jezebel, all of these bell words, even the bell in the tower of your church, that's all bell and Tauruses, bulls and Tauruses, which is the Taurus field and the hyperbola, basically. And that's why we have the Bible and the Torah. The Torah and the Bible, the terrible, the trouble, the adorable, all of these words that have tor, like actor, they all end in tor or bull. Capable, able, reliable, responsible, creator, actor, tor and bull, because everything comes from Tauruses and bulls, hyperbolas. And when you speak in hyperbola, you are exaggerating or thrusting, because bole is ballistic. It's a super thrust. And every atom is this. It's the proton bursting forth, making waves. And the electron is bringing back in, bringing home again, inbreathing. You see, red shift expanding, blue shift contracting. And so that ball that you see of the sun, Baal, that's why Jesus always has that halo and that corona, because it's the crown, the corona.
Yeah, what we got to get into that, the coronavirus, that, obviously, as you know, and as you're telling us right now, that our language has meaning, much more meaning than we know or that we think of normally. Nothing just shows up randomly. Even the way we enunciate a certain sound or consonant or vowel has meaning, right? And there, I go through, I do a whole class of what is the meaning of God? B is first distinction, separation, cover over, and then what is k? cuz to cut off from the, boom, we're going to separate them apart. And it just goes on and on. P is pus, to go over, like a bridge, a pontiff, a pupil, you're bridging over. And just all these different things have deep meaning. But let's get into corona. This has some meaning, doesn't it? What's the meaning here?
Well, it's interesting because when you change the intonation of that word, you get coroner. And the coroner is always examining dead bodies. And it comes from crown, and it comes from Kronos, and it comes from Saturn, who is Satan, the god of this world. So the Grim Reaper, the emaciated Saturn, all dressed in black, he brings you back into the black hole. You see, black is where you go back, where there is no lack. Black light is the source light, white light is the false light. So the coroner, with his coronavirus, is knocking on people's doors and probably going to take away a whole bunch of people, and probably make a big harvest of sleeping souls. And on the other hand, it is speaking about time. Kronos is about time. So it's telling you that the coroner and the Grim Reaper are coming for you, and time's up. So they've chosen the correct name. They always do. They always do. You never, ever just look at a word and take it for granted as though someone haphazardly and randomly gave it a name. No, the stars are doing this all the time. It's all theatre, and everything is named, even your own name, according to the stars. It's all about the timeline. So when you know the timeline, you know what coronavirus means.
This is fascinating. Okay, so you've told us about what's happening in Capricorn right now, and Capricorn is the first sign after, what is it? It goes Sagittarius and Capricorn, and then next is going to be Aquarius, and then Pisces, and then Aquarius and Pisces, then Aries. Then we wind up all the way around back into Sagittarius on December 21st. Let's talk about what's happening planetarily from this point now right on till the 21st, which you've designated as an interesting celestial alignment. And that's where Jupiter and Saturn be opposite each other at that point, won't they? Because Jupiter will be over there in Sagittarius. But where's Jupiter going to be?
Well, Jupiter, did you say?
Jupiter, yeah.
Okay, well, Jupiter will be entering Aquarius as well on the very, very same day, on the 21st of December. So what this tells me is that when all the planets are in a bowl shape within 180 degrees of the ecliptic, and they're all starting at Capricorn and going all the way up to Cancer, that means they're all waxing. So all the 10 planets, the whole lot of the astrological gamut of energies, they are all waxing. When planets are going from Capricorn up to the Tropic of Cancer, that's their positive action.
Like when the moon's waxing, when the moon's going towards full.
Exactly. It's exactly the same thing. Yep. So there's a lot of drive behind all of these planets right now. And it's very appropriate that they're all within not even 180 degrees. It's 150 right now, or 40. From 23rd degree of Capricorn to the 18th degree of Taurus. That's a trine. That's 120 degrees. They are all within 120 degrees. That's just incredible. You've got those 4 I mentioned in Capricorn. Then you jump over to Pisces. You've got Mercury, Moon, and Neptune. Now the Sun's in Aries, and there's 2 in Taurus, Uranus and Venus. And so all of this waxing is that it's building up to something.
Yeah.
And it's when the Sun gets to Cancer and then starts waning, then you've got sort of the June energies and July of hot summer coming in and everything coming to fruition. Then all of that will reach its peak, all of those planets.
Wow. So so essentially energetically from all this, we're headed somewhere around July, maybe even the dog days of summer. I want to get your take on the dog days of summer. This whole thing's going to come to a head. Is that what's happening energetically? That's it appears to be what you're saying.
I think so. I'm going to project forward now because I want to be as accurate as possible. I'm looking at today's chart. I'm just looking at the mundane chart today. So what I'll do now is I'm going to go forward to July, and we'll see what's happening there.
Okay. Well, while you're doing that and you're getting that loaded up, the dog days of summer, this is what I've heard my whole life. You tell me if I'm correct or not. The reason why we have January 1st as our New Year is because that's the highest ascent of the dog star in the supposed northern hemisphere in the night sky. That's the highest ascent it can reach. And then then it goes underneath the horizon. And then sometime around May or April, depends on what latitude you're on, it comes back up again. And then when it comes up with the sun, that's the dog days of summer, right? That's because it's Sirius. Sirius is the dog star. When it rises with the sun, that's when you have the most intense, heat of the summer, when people go out and rob banks. And, that, I don't know, usually comes up in New York City where I grew up. It would come up in like the very end of July or the beginning of August, where people would be flustered and just, that was the peak of the summer, is the way we thought about it. Is any of that correct? Or what are your thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Ptolemy says that the dog days arise from the sun being conjunct Sirius. Sirius does something to the sun. It's known to be the mother, Isis, of the sun, Jesus. It's Isis and Jesus, or Horus. So our sun gets re-energized as it goes up to the Tropic of Cancer, because it's in the gospel. It's called the wedding feast of Cana. Cana is Cancer, and the wedding feast is like the June Cancer festival, when marriages are blessed in June due to the moons. Then they have a honeymoon in June due to the sun being in Cancer, the sign of the moon. So it was always known as the wedding feast of Cana, where Jesus turns water into wine, or pour wine into good wine. And so once it hits that point, it has to then wane, and that's why John the Baptist's birthday is exactly opposite Jesus on the 25th of December. The 25th or the 24th of June is his cousin's birthday in the liturgical year. And that's why he says, I will go on decreasing, he will go on increasing, because the sun increases from the 25th of December, the birthday of the sun, Sol Invictus. It must wax till it gets up to the Tropic of Cancer. And then on June the 1st is the solstice. And then 3 days later, on the 24th of June, John the Baptist's waning cycle begins. So that explains what that is. And so Cancer has that significance. And when the sun gets up to there, it's reached Jerusalem. This is where in the gospel it says that Jesus rode into Jerusalem on on two donkeys, on a donkey and an ass. Now, how do you do that? How do you ride anywhere on a donkey and an ass at the same time? Well, there's an asterism in Cancer that's called Asinellus borealis and Asinellus australis, the northern donkey and the southern donkey. And when you look up at Christmas, you see at Christmas time, you'll see Sirius in Cancer, where it always is, and Gemini. And then right next to it, you see the manger, which is where the two donkeys are. And there's always a couple of donkeys in the manger and everything. And you see the big star on the top of the Christmas tree. Well, remember, the Christmas tree is up at the top. When the sun goes up that ramp, it goes up to meet
Sirius.
Sirius.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where the dog, God, is on the top of the TP at the North Pole with Polaris, you see. So that's why the dog days happen, because the sun is winding in the coil and generating that pulse of heat. And so it's a generator, and the dog days come from the sun going to that peak of the Christmas tree and being married in Cancer at the marriage feast of Cana, and then producing the good oil or the good wine, because the sun needs time to make things mature, you know, along the cycle. So that's the symbol of Christianity: wine, oil, and bread, because it's the sun, Christ, on the ecliptic producing those items for man.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into looking at now June, July. And by the way, for everyone who's not really versed in the zodiac, when you're in June, early June, you're in Gemini, and then you move into Cancer. And, you know, Cancer, interestingly, that time of the year, right there at the end of June, is where most people lose their virginity. It's so interesting, the astrological significance of that. That's so interesting. And then most children in the world are born in March as a result of that, obviously, because 9 months later. And
Aries.
It's interesting. But then, okay, so tell us what's happening in this particular context with, we got all these planets now all unusually coming together in a waxing movement with the sun going up that hill. Everything's waxing. It's coming to a highly energetic point. What's that look like for us?
Well, there's definitely going to be some changes in, I guess, economy. I'm thinking Cancer is always about the economy, and Libra. Libra's when all the stock markets crash. But that's because of autumn and the fall of the sun. So it's kind of made to happen symbolically there, and the justice of the scales, sorting out, balancing the books and stuff like that. But Cancer is where it always begins, because in Cancer you have bears, Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. And because it's waning, you have a bear market. Remember, Taurus is on this side, waxing, the bull market. So that's the sun going from Capricorn up to Cancer. It's quite appropriate. There are bulls on that side. Then the bears start in Cancer, and there's other bears too. There's Arcturus, the red star in Bootes, that's called the bear, and it's actually the Californian red star. That's why the Californian flag has a bear on it, because it's Arcturus, the brightest star in the northern hemisphere, which is red. And so those are the three bears, and that's all on the waning side from Cancer to Capricorn. So I'm hoping that it's waning for the petrodollar and that the currency type commercial monetary system, and it ushers in a trade, barter and trade company kind of setup. I'm hoping that, because once the sun hits Cancer and that cusp of Cancer and Leo, it will be opposite Jupiter, Pluto and Saturn on between 18 and 16 degrees of Capricorn. So look around, I would say June 21st, around the days of the 24th, opposite the 25th of Cancer, the birthday of Sol Invictus. That's what it used to be called. And so the sun has his birthday there, whereas John the Baptist, the waner, he is whinging and whining. Why do you have whining? Because it's waning. So I will be looking around the 24th of June to see, around that focal point, to see some great changes in the geopolitical structure and especially economical. There has to be. I mean, you've got what I'm seeing. I wish I could share my screen. I can see the sun and moon on a new moon on the 20th of June, 2020. Look at that. July 20, 2020. And you've got the moon directly opposite Satan retrograding, conjunct Pluto retrograding, conjunct Jupiter in his fall, Capricorn, retrograding, all three of them opposite the new moon, bang. Like the 20th of July is the focal point for me. And then August is when all the changes are going to be implemented.
So let's get into this now. I mean, you've given us some interesting dates, things to look for. Let's just say, you know, normal people in our normal lives, I guess this depends on our natal chart perhaps, but let's say we're trying to figure out what we're going to do financially. What are we going to do in terms of our movements? Should we retreat out of the city? Should we stay put? What should we do in terms of like reconnecting with our family? What about our communications? What are some of those things in that time frame of, you know, where this thing's going to come through as an expression of these energies? What would you recommend? Can you make a recommendation like that, or is it too broad?
No, I can. Of course you can, but everything's going to be based on the individual circumstances. For instance, for some people, it might be best to stay in the cities because that's where their families are, and they will be protected if they've got family. And they might not have any place out in the country that they know of where they could go and where they feel like they'd be a part of. So depends on what kind of structures people have already set up. But if you haven't got any structure in place or anything like that, I wouldn't be panicking. First of all, personally, this is how I'm thinking. Okay, so if this is going to influence people, well and good. I don't wish it to, other than to tell them what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I'm not going to have any fear about anything, period. Because if I die, I look forward to that because I know what death is. Right now, I think that'd be just so cool, but selfish as well, because I know that I want to be around to help people, because I feel that I've come here to help people, because that's all I want to do. I don't want to do anything else. I don't want Ferraris, swimming pools, tennis courts, helicopters, movie parts. I don't want any of that shit. That's noise. Ooh. I just want to help people to wake up. That's all I want to do.
Right. Well, we can tell by your actions, right? You could always tell what somebody's real motives are by their actions. And over the years, you are just dedicated to learning, passing along that wisdom, helping people out. So it's beautiful. And I'm very, very ecstatic to meet people like you who just have that in their heart. It's in your heart.
It is. It really is. Yes. It comes part of your package of where you come from and who you really, really are. And if you're still living according to knowing who you are, and I know who I am, to the extent possible. And so I'm just following that and my chart. It is in my calling. So I would say to people, be as prepared as you can be. It's wise to have, bags of nuts and bags of rice and stocks of water. That's a great idea, because you can help other people as well, and yourself. But if you're going to over focus on survival, like these very materialistic, fleshly people who think this is the only life, this is the only body I'll ever have, those people are so limited that their way of getting through this and surviving is about having a generator and plenty of fuel and guns and swords, and those things might not eventuate. We might not even have any famines or anything. It might be something totally different. So everyone who is prepared is going to get caught out in some way. They'll be thankful on the one hand that they prepared this, that, and the other way, but then they'll be saying, oh, why didn't I think of this? No matter how prepared you are, there's always going to be that one thing that you really screwed up, how did you miss it? So I just say to people, try and be of the philosopher mind and be philosophical about this, not materialistic, and where is your stocks and your money going to be, and your properties, and how to protect them. That's good too. I mean, it'd be stupid and foolish if you had wealth and bank accounts and you were blessed materially on this plane and you just sort of walked away from it. That's silly. You've got your children to think of. You've got other people you can help with that money. So whatever is valuable, should have a value system in you. And if you don't have that, you know, no matter how you prepare, you're going to screw up. So the best values, the priorities would be the spiritual things. You know, are you going to be one of these people that sees an apple tree and collects all the apples and puts it in his box in his house, and then half of them go to waste anyway, where you could just have had 10 apples and shared it with the community? Are you going to be that survival oriented that you will actually be greedy? And greed is a vice that even if you do survive, whatever's coming, shortage of food, you won't ascend. Because when your energy frequency tries to go to the higher planes, it will remember how greedy you were and how stupid you were and selfish, and it will not let you ascend, because it's a limitation to be greedy. And it limits your ether field, your magnetic vital body becomes crippled and satanic and luciferic, and I guess luciferic or a Harriman, you know,
or Ahrimanic. We should get into that. This is interesting too, because this seems to be, you know, when I look at the planets and I see the archetypes of Mars and Venus and Mercury and the sun and the moon and all these celestial mechanics that are going on, a lot of times I think about the Rudolf Steiner, and I think about the Luciferic and Ahrimanic deceptions, which are always in front of us. For example, we might be tempted towards into, you know, mechanistic, materialistic thinking, which is very Ahrimanic, or we might be tempted into, I've got to become like a Hollywood celebrity, which is very Luciferic, or I've got to be a rock star, you know, very Luciferic. And we might be tempted by these, which seem to sit in front of even the celestial mechanics and those influences of those archetypes. You know what I'm saying? Like, somehow in my mind, the way I look at this is that, you know, you have all of these archetypical energies around us that are displaying the stories of our lives. But even more primary, this is, you know, when I'm talking to people, for example, and getting their body types and trying to organize a diet for them and strategy for them, one of the first questions I ask, usually the first question is, do you escape on weekends, or are you a grinder? Because I need to know which tendency they're going towards. Are they trying to escape, which is Luciferic, or are they trying to grind it on, go get this stuff done, I'm going to just hit these 15 things, which is very Ahrimanic, because that will determine a lot about their destiny even before they get into the archetypical stories that cascade down from the heavens, you know, the archetypical energies. What's your thought on that? I really, if you understand what I'm saying, I think you do. You know Steiner enough.
Beautiful. Yes, I do, and I love the man. I think he was a syncretist, and syncretism, what I do, incorporates everything. It's diet, it's sexuality, it's philosophy, it's astrology, it's divination, it's every field, and he was a true syncretist. So the one of the greatest, you know, visionaries and contributors to humanity on the ascending side ever, Steiner. So the balance between Ahrimanic and Luciferic ways of doing things, this is why a lot of focus is on the breath and on the blood. And Adam means both those words, blood, red blood, and breath, the breathing one. So the Adamic man would be the man and woman who knows how to regulate their heavens, because your body is the heaven. It's called an anatomy, and all is atom, and those atoms, which are electrical effects of magnetic pulses, the digital and the analog world, they are tuned to the frequency of your source. So if your source is weak, you see people with weak souls, they get around and they find criminal jobs like hitmen because their souls are weak. They have no compassion. There's no force, there's no amplitude and volts in those pulses of their spiritual source. It's weak. And astrologically, it shows in their chart all the retrograding planets, all the bad aspects, between them, the Grand Cross and all of these other things. You'll see telltale signs of this, of, you know, someone who is probably degenerating, not regenerating. They're called degenerates. And so as we come into this world, we are taught in yoga and meditation how to breathe and regulate the breath. Ones who do not regulate the breath are either attracting Ahriman or Lucifer in their lives. And Lucifer is associated with the red blood. And Ahriman is associated with the nerve man. So we have systems in our body. The nerves are regulated by the cerebrum, the cerebrospinal nervous system, Aries, the cerebrum, the ram. And Sarah Abram is where you'll find them in scripture, cerebrum. And they are in heaven. Heaven is head, heaved up, same root. Whereas heel is hell. So as you sublimate your subtle mind and grow out of your gross mind, you are breathing and balancing the two. And so Lucifer is seeking to expand you in one way, and Ahriman is contracting you like Saturn. It's like Jupiter and Saturn, but neither of them are really good or bad. They play the parts of those in opposition to each other, only in contrast to each other. They're not set polarities, you know. Nothing is set. They just play that part. And so by breathing too fast, for instance, you're shrinking your blood, your nervous system. By breathing slower, you're expanding it. So Adam is the one who regulates his breath. He's in control of his breath. And the breath is the secret of keeping the pH level neutral, or where it should be, 7.24 or something. So it's all about breathing. You'll see the people who are, they're very acidic.
And nervous.
Huh?
And nervous.
Yeah. Yes, because the nervous system now is not being nourished because there's not enough pulse magnetic energy in the breath. And so that's Aries, that's the Christ in you. The Christ in you is your nervous system. Jesus in you is your blood. Jesus is the soul. The soul is in the blood. Your soul is in the blood. Your spirit is in your nervous system. And they are the two trees of life. The blood is the tree of good and evil. And the nervous system is the tree of everlasting life. Because if you save your chrism in sexual activity as well, you save your christic cerebrospinal fluids, which come from your claustrum, your Santa claustrum, and go down the chimney and bring gifts down below. If you squander those gifts down below in ejaculatory orgasms, well, you're depleting your energy, your brain, all the nutrients which are required to be reinstated, recycled, to build a 13th cranial nerve called the Christ nerve. So you've got your 12 cranial disciples nerves in the cranium with Christ, the cerebrum, the Lamb of God. Hiram Abith, Hiram above. Thank you, Masonry. And once you lift up the Son of Man, as Jesus says to Nicodemus, you lift up as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so you must lift up the Son of Man if you will be born again. So to be born again of the subtle mind, you have to lift up the Son of Man. Man is manna. The manna from heaven is the claustrum. It comes from the head and it feeds and nourishes the nervous system, the pneumogastric vagus system, which is nourishing all the vital nerves. The 7 vital nerves, the 7, you could say planets as well, regulated by the planets. So that if you don't nourish through breath, the blood, your soul, and your spirit, your nervous system, It's the secret is in the breath. The breath is the regulator to regulate, purify the blood and nourish the nervous system. And as Manly P. Hall said, once man learns how to develop his nervous system, which is far more advanced than that of the animals, then he makes a Christ system. It's like a Christmas tree. And in fact, that's what the Christmas tree is, with the star above, which is the ding, ding, ding of the aura, the halo. So the soul, S-O-U-L, is the same as Sol Invictus, the solar sun. And so soul also becomes S-A-L, salvation, salt, saliva. So
Salary.
Solidarity comes from the soul, from the sun, because Christians are soldiers of Christ, right? Soul diers, because they die for their cause. They don't go out to do it deliberately, but if they have to, they will even go as far as to say, well, take my body. I don't care, because I live by my principles. That's what it means to be a soldier of Christ, or a warrior. It means to be a soldier of the light, and let not darkness ever come upon you, that you shall tolerate dark deeds and to corrupt your Christic ascension process. Because this is blasphemy. How can you do that? You're murdering yourself. Why would you do that? It's a sin against yourself. You don't do that. You don't go and work for a salary and then go home and burn your money, and then come back next week and work again.
Let me ask you this. It seems like, just talking to you, you are understanding the soul's role here on earth. And so you've come out of the Aramonic deception of total obliteration at death. So what do you think happens when you die? And to me, it seems like wherever somebody's soul evolution is determines what happens when they die. How quickly they're going to be flipped back right here into this toroid, right back here onto the prime material plane, or how do the planets play a role in these different shells that are further out from us? What happens to the soul when we check out of this world, based on your knowledge? I really want to get that from you.
Great, good question. So the soul already has predetermined outcomes. It's already done, So, and what will happen is, when you die, you become unconditioned and unlimited, but only in the sense of you are restored to as much of your capacity that you have developed. If you're still resonating with things on this plane that have captured you, like addictions and lusts and greed and riches and fame and things that are improper for the ascension process, well, even when you die, even though you'll be unlimited, you won't be able to ascend into and receive the blessings that you were meant to. You'll reincarnate, because you'll know that you want to go higher. So you have to come back into body to go through, again, certain processes to get it right, so that you can have frequency or currency to pay the ferryman to get you to the other side. It's like the song Buying a Stairway to Heaven. And she's buying a stairway to heaven. Or in Revelation chapter 3:18, where Jesus says, buy gold from me if you want to ascend, or something to that nature. Let's have a look at that scripture, because it's so appropriate that people understand what's really going on.
It's really important, because it determines your whole perspective. For example, if you're bought into total obliteration when you die, your behavior under the circumstances we're in right now will be, I've got a horde, I need to get guns, this is the one life I got, I better fight it out, they're coming to get my life. That kind of behavior will suddenly start to dominate. But if you're a believer in reincarnation, the ascension of the soul and the development of the soul, and you have that perspective, then you realize, oh, Ahriman, Lucifer, all the planets, all that stuff, these are the stories of our lives. These are the energies of the prime material plane. And and you have a perspective of like, oh, that's the resistance and that's the information and storyline that we need to advance our soul. And you have that perspective and it just feels like, oh, it's no, you know, no big deal. All is well. You know what I'm saying?
Yep, exactly. So optimization is probably one of my, I always use either transform, transmute, or optimization. We're here to optimize. You know, if you're writing a book, for instance, every time you reboot your computer, you would want to improve that work before you turn your computer off at night. You don't want a virus to attach itself to it and corrupt all that beautiful autobiography that you're writing. Every day you want to add a chapter or something, and you want to build on it, right? And then dying is akin to turning your computer off and everything going back to the file, which is in counter space, doesn't occupy any space at all. And you go back and you sleep, and then the next morning, computer's rebooted, and then you make improvements. And you protect that file because you don't want any Trojan horses in there. You don't want anything to destroy or lose that soul, because the soul is the RAM between the file and your screen. The screen is the body, RAM is the soul, the archive or the file, that is the spirit. And it's in counter space. It doesn't operate in spatially. It's just ones and zeros, so it's energy. And you are the same, we are the same. So when we die, we've reincarnated, we've been rebooted. Have we made improvements or not? And are they things that we like? Have we changed things? Perhaps we had to take a whole chapter out and then add another one, or another one with a different ending. So this is what we're doing here. We're here to correct all of that that's in the file. We're here to make it better, because when we die, no more activity. There's no activity there unless you go to the place you want to, then there is activity. In other words, in Bhagavad Gita, it says the highest plane is Vrindavan, where Krishna is, and then Vaikuntha, where Vishnu is, then the Brahmajyoti, where Brahma is, and all of these
realms.
Brahmananda, all of these realms, yes. So the idea is to get as close to the Godhead as you can, to your source, because that's where we come from. We are that special. We come straight from God, the monad, not the dyad, the triad, the tetrad, and all the other refracted and expanded emanations of God. We are from the very, very top. So we should aim for the top, at least in this lifetime.
Well said. Okay, so I want to ask you another thing on this, and then we'll cycle back to finish up with the coronavirus. And this is something I've wanted to ask you for a long time, and obviously with revelations about our Earth and the prime material plane that we're living on, and all of this. And I've been talking to people for years who are involved in secret government programs, aliens. Do you think that it is possible that there are other realms like this one, and these beings are tunneling in here with their technology, or are they already here and part of this construct as it is? I guess the question is this realm isolated and alone, or are there other realms where other karmas and other toroidal fields and other planetary systems and all of that going on simultaneously with this one, and where some of those beings can tunnel in over here somehow through technology or other means? What are your thoughts on that? I've always wanted to ask you that question.
Yeah, wormholes.
Yes.
So the stars in the sky, they are holes. The sun is a hole. The moon is a hole. The 5 visible planets, they are holes. And thank you to Pierluigi Gina for teaching me that, because he was the scientist and genius who worked with Marconi for 10 years when they were discovering everything about radio waves and making the radio and everything like that. He studied, and he insists that the Earth is stationary, by the way. He died in 2004. I've done videos on him.
How do you spell his name?
Pierre, P-I-E-R. That's another way of saying Peter in Italian. Piero, or Paul, Peter Paul. Pier Luigi. That's Luigi.
Like Luigi, as in Mario Brothers Luigi. Okay.
Yeah, so Pier Luigi is his first name. Peter Luigi. Pier Luigi, and then Igina is I-G-H-I-N-A.
Okay. Now, interesting. Okay.
Yep. So we come from the stars. Think about it. We call our young people youngsters. We call our female friends sisters, spinsters. We call our bad people monsters, imposters, fraudsters, gangsters. We call our good people masters, pastors and ministers. We call our religious people. But we all have ancestors and dynasties. It's all the stars. So either way, as we're trying to get back as imposters or masters, monsters or masters, we are all stars. And the names tell you that. So the deity that makes demons, it's telling you, the moon, demon, or monstar, comes from the moon. That's what is being taught by Circe, the moon, who turned all of Achilles' men into swine, or Ulysses' men into swine, because she will turn you into a monkey, if you don't have the frequency. And Maurice Cotterell, a great man from Ireland, English man living in Ireland, friend of mine, he's a great YouTuber. He's got a lot of videos on science and spiritual science, and he teaches that if your soul is that weak when you die, you could incarnate as a weak animal, like a butterfly, or even a little bit stronger, a bunch of birds. Your soul could be a whole
flock of birds.
Or if it's strong, maybe, you'd be a lion or something. But if it's not strong enough to come back as a human or to ascend above the human, that's how it works. And he can prove it scientifically. He's actually done this scientifically, showing how reincarnation works. Great man, Maurice Cotterell. So going back to those entities that are coming in, yes, there are a lot of entities that need our energy because they're not from source. There's only one way of getting it: eating the blood of our children, which is the most powerful liquid, and children are the most powerful of human beings because of their imaginative force. And so they could get the blood of older people as well and get power, because power is in the blood, but it's way more pure and glorious, you see. That's why they have to eat our children, and they come through wormholes. But the wormhole in our toroidal model Earth that we have is at the North Pole or at Antarctica, at the outer ring. And so those are where the holes are, and they know that there are wormholes there. They know that the sun is a hole. That's where the word holy comes from. See, the halo around Jesus, when Jesus says, no one goes to the Father except through me, is saying that we have to be solar heroes. We go back through the sun to cause. It is the Father and the Saviour who art in heaven. The moon is the womb. Saturn, the coroner, hence coronavirus, he is the tomb of the universe, the Grim Reaper. The womb is the moon. But the sun in the middle kingdom is the Saviour. And that's why no one goes to source, the Father, except through the Son in heaven, God's Son.
I have read, I think it was Jacques Vallée, who's a UFO guy, and he's still going. He's still written these books. He had mentioned something, his position was that these are interdimensional phenomenon, whatever this is, which is, as we've found out through our research, is closer to the truth, and they're coming from some star over there that's coming over here, whatever that story was. He said that there's certain times when they come through astrologically. I remember that. I couldn't remember exactly. I remember Capricorn was involved. I remember some of the things that he'd written about it, but I couldn't remember the exact stuff. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's known that earthquakes will happen on certain degrees of the ecliptic. It's known that certain geniuses are born on certain degrees of the ecliptic. It's known that certain strengths and weaknesses are caused by certain degrees, but not only degrees, minutes and seconds. Now,
Jeez.
here, here is where astrology gets a bad rap, because astrologers mostly are not competent. It's like when I go to a restaurant to eat food, I don't like the food. I cook better at home. Sorry, there's no restaurant out there that can beat the way my hands cook. I don't, and you call it food. So when people attack astrologers, well, I do too, because most of them think that the moon's a rock. They're so stupid. When Ptolemy said, all of them, every single thing that you look up to in the sky is entirely luminous. So I will go with the ancient ones of old, because they weren't corrupted by this satanic Jesuit Copernican stupidity. So when you realize this, you realize that we're talking about heavenly bodies that are transcendental. You can't describe them and explain them exactly with your logic in a brain of a fleshly.
That's going to bring up another thing I wanted to talk to you about, but keep going. This is really good.
Yeah. So where was I going? What was the...
Okay, so we were talking about geniuses coming in at certain degrees of the ecliptic and certain phenomenon, UFO phenomenon, strange lights in the sky, things like that seem to be associated, at least according to the UFO researchers that I really feel like have gotten onto it, like Jacques Vallée. There's certain times in the astrological coordinates where those things are more likely to happen. I think that's a very interesting angle on all this.
The cross quarter days, brother. November 1st, the Day of the Dead, Halloween. It's known that why they wear those masks is because the veil between the physical and the transcendental is very thin in that cross quarter day of November, when the Pleiades are high in the sky, opposite in Taurus. And so what happens is that it's a portal. You will see these pumpkin-headed entities, and you will see these witches, and they will come out of the fluid world and appear to your eyes only during those days. That's why we light candles during those days. We light incense. I posted here the Mexica people in Oaxaca doing their 21st of March equinoctial celebration. You can look on my timeline on Facebook. It's in Spanish though, unfortunately. I'll probably do one in English, but you'll see how they dance, and they're doing these special, they go around in circles and they go in and out of the circle. They go toward the center and then jump out, because it's the sun. The sun's doing that. It's going from Capricorn to Cancer, Capricorn to Cancer. And along the way, as the Book of Enoch says, there are 6 gates in the east, and those are special gates, and they all happen at the tropical points and the cross-quarter days.
Wait,
So,
is one of those cross-quarter days Beltane?
yeah,
That's
Beltane.
the other side.
That's on opposite of Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got Groundhog's Day, February 1st, opposite Loaf Mass Day, August 1st.
And this is so interesting. I mean, we could go on for hours. And so let's bring it back here onto the coronavirus and the situation here. You had mentioned that interesting date, July 20th, 2020. And that's kind of, I think I got cut off, but I think that was like the maximum waxing of all the planets, including the sun's ascent up towards Cancer. What happens next? Where do we go after that? What do you think is going to happen here after that maximum waxing of those? I guess it's 10 planets, really, right? Sun, moon, all the heavens.
Well, what happens is we are here to bring the fruition of everything that this waxing cycle is bringing. It's bringing us to a focal point. So whatever that is, for the materialists, it will be running the new monetary system to the most efficient they can possibly do, because they don't have anything else. For us, we will have to bring to fruition what our desires are leading us to. And so whichever way we go, there will be two outcomes. As it says, there are always, in the long run, there's still two paths you can go on. And it is true, there's the left path and the right path. And the right one is the right one. It's the path of purity. So we should be aiming to purify, sublimate, make all things subtle from gross in our bodies, alchemically. We should be transforming, and we should be reaping the results. I expect that we will have stronger communities, stronger solidarity between us. We will have gone through so much hell in terms of seeing how stupid and how ridiculous the control system is, that they can create something so false and make people actually believe it and follow it like sheep going over a precipice, you know, leading to their death. And they're just going to go and get chipped and vaccinated, and they're just going to oblige and conform. So I believe that men will become gods. We've been thrust through a portal. Clearly the sun is changing its frequency. Its light is different. I've been solar gazing for 10 years now, solid, and I can see it. I know it. I always look at the sun any time of the day, straight into the heart of it. Doesn't matter where it is now. I can look straight at it, and I can see, you know, what's beyond it. I can see the light, the toroidal field that it's making. It's the sun is actually the heart, and the heart comes from a word called core, corazon, and core, since L and R are interchangeable, becomes coal, and that's the coil. Your heart is actually a string, a muscle like a string, and it's coiled, and it does this. Dum, 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 dum. That is a core. That's a coil. It's electromagnetic. And so, and the word, and it's also, coal becomes bowl, the hyperbola. And bowl is where you get biology from. So that is where it comes from. The pulse, and that's why you check your heart pulse, right? Because this is radiation. Hearts radiate, they don't vibrate. Brains vibrate thought waves, and livers vibrate emotion waves. So noisy-minded people and toxically emotional people, they won't, as it says, drunkards, loose conduct people, liars, greedy people will not inherit God's kingdom. God's kingdom is in your heart, because it's only in your heart that you can transcend the vibratory world and go into the radiation pulse world, the digital world that you really, truly are. And when you experience that, oh, I mean, there's no turning back. That's why I was going to read that scripture, which I've followed all my life, where Jesus says in Revelation 3:18, I counsel you to buy gold from refined in the fire from me, so you can become rich, and white clothes or linen to wear, so you can cover your shameful nakedness, and salve to put on your eyes, so you can see. So what it's talking about is transmuting our frequency. When Jesus gives certain talents and denarii to his 3 slaves, one he gives 5, 1 2, and 1 he gives 1, and he says, bye, I'm going for a year, I'll be back. Talents actually means talents. We've been given love, a certain amount of love in our soul's reincarnation process, a certain amount of mental force, sexual force, etheric force, emotional force. What do we do with it? Do we create toxic stories for us and go round and round in circles, in loops of lust and addiction and stupidity? Or do we, as Steiner said, you know, as we're going, we are inhabiting or inheriting our super senses rather than staying in our sensual world here of touch and sight, which is all limited. It's all totally limited and conditioned and inaccurate. So rather than that, are we expanding? Are we optimizing? And that's buying gold. It's buying, because gold is of the frequency which is the most stable element, which is constant. And it's a purifying. To get gold, you have to burn, you have to put it through the baptism of fire.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Santos Bonacci, do you still do, give us your websites and everything. We've got to get all that from you. And do you still do individual readings in astrology for people?
Yeah, every day. I'm always
Every
doing
day. Awesome. So anybody wants a reading, you've seen what a master this man is of his craft, and what incredible and beautiful spiritual insight you've given us, and just wonderful celestial insight, and wonderful elocution. You've spoken very well. It's been just a wonder to speak with you, and we'll speak again soon. So to everyone, how do they get in touch with you?
Okay, so my website is universaltruthschool.com. There's a page there where you can book a consultation. It doesn't have to be anything other than whatever you want, whatever questions you have, if you like, or a chart reading. And then my YouTube channel, which is where you can get all the content free, is called Mr. Astrotheology. One word, Mr. MR Astrotheology.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to put the links below this video so you can track down Santos Bonacci. What an incredible being you are, and always love your just how much you grasp onto the truth and just hold that in your heart. It's the best ever, and you've been battling the establishment all along and just being right there for us. And thank God you're in Mexico. Mexico's the best ever.
I love it.
It's so the best ever.
Thank you, dearly brothers. All the best. Take care.
All the best.
Until next time.
Have the best day
Bye-bye.
ever. Aloha.